I'm thrilled to welcome today's guest, Travis Lee, a mastermind in the world of direct mail marketing. He's the co-founder of 3D Mail Results, and Travis has revolutionized how businesses think about and execute their direct mail campaigns. With an innovative approach that stands out in the digital age, his strategies have helped countless businesses achieve remarkable engagement and response rates. And beyond the mailbox, Travis is also active on social media, where he shares his insights and connects with both his clients and his fans. Travis, it's great to have you with us today.
Wonderful to be here. Thanks for the invite, and looking forward to sharing some direct mail expertise with some of our listeners.
Excellent. Well, could we maybe start by asking if you could share what sparked the idea for 3D Mail Results and how you began this unique adventure?
You know, I think an interesting story. I think it's actually fairly instructive. So I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. We'll give the shorter version than we normally give. But I started this business with my father in 2008, 2009. The years kind of blend together. Let's just say it wasn't a great economic time. I do remember that. So, somewhere around then. And my father had this business. It was called American Retail Supply. Doesn't really matter what it did. They were a wholesale distribution company, right? And they had grown that business. He had grown that business using direct mail in a business where it was very much Salesforce driven, right? Nobody did marketing, everyone did sales. So people were hammering the phones, people were walking up and down the street. So if you can imagine, we are serving mainly small retail stores, right? So not the big box stores, they have divisions of us, right? They have divisions that do what we do. But the bike shop on Main Street, that would be the typical client. And so you'd have, what we affectionately called the foot soldiers walking up and down the street, knocking on doors and working the phones. And he discovered this guy named Dan Kennedy, who I'm sure you are very familiar with, renowned marketing expert. And this was back in 1991, 1992. And he said, if you can figure out how to get direct mail to work in your business, it can revolutionize it. It can be a force multiplier. You can do all the things you want and never leave your office. And he thought that sounded amazing, right? I can have salespeople now in my office. I can control them a little bit more, hear what they're saying. There's none of these sketchy expense accounts as they go around, walking up and down the street. And we can control it, right? We can mail who we want to mail. Anyway, his first direct mail piece he sends out, he gets a 25% response rate, which is obscene. That is absurd. No one should expect that. I debate whether I even say it, but it's the truth, right? And so now he's hooked. And so this is 92, 93. We're coming up on 40 years, over 40 years, or all over 30 years. It's amazing how it travels. And then that evolved into sending what we now call 3D mail, which we'll probably show some of this, but we set like these little tiny rubber feet in the mail, or we send a message in a bottle in the mail. And it evolved into this thing that was way more than just paper and ink and envelopes and stamps. Well, now let's fast forward 2000, like I said, 6-ish or so, 7-ish. We're actually in a mastermind group. And for years and years and years, we had used this stuff. And people kept coming to us and saying, where are you getting your ideas? How are you finding these things? And our answer was always, well, in the States, we say we go to the dollar store and we walk up and down the aisles until we have inspiration. And then we run to the clerk and say, I need 5,000 of this little trinket, right? And that's what we were telling people what to do. Well, it became evident that people didn't want to do that, and that because of our expertise as a wholesale distribution company, it doesn't matter what we sell, right? A widget is a widget is a widget. Could we buy these things from the same folks that we're buying them from and wholesale distribute this stuff? So anyway, we go to a mastermind meeting and we say, we're thinking about starting this new division. You guys have seen the 3D mail that we do. Do you guys think it makes sense? And we could have left that meeting with thousands and thousands of dollars in orders right then and there, right? So this is November-ish of, like I said, 2007 or so. By March of 2008, again, the years get a little sketchy, but it's around there. 4 or 5 months later, we'd started this new division, and I was put in charge of running it. And since then, we've completely sold the other business. We've gone whole hog into direct mail, and now we do everything from the wholesale distribution of the products to printing and mailing and stuffing and postage and sending it out the door for you with full mail capabilities. So It really was we used this thing with great success. How can we now turn it into a profit center and now a full-fledged business for us?
And now you're a full service provider in this space. Direct mail in a digital world seems a little counterintuitive. What advantages are there to sending 3D mail?
So that's a great question. The biggest reason to send it is while everybody's running over here, you should at least look around and say, should I be running over there? So at the very least, when everyone else is running one direction, is it time to start thinking about running the other direction? So that's the first thing, right? Dan Kennedy, again, my mentor, says the masses are usually wrong. So if the masses are wrong, let's see if they're all running that way, maybe we should be running that way. So that's number one. Number two, frankly, there's just less competition in the mailbox right now, right? So when we started doing pay-per-click ads in 2002, 3, 4, right when they first introduced it, you'd get 25-cent clicks and 50-cent clicks. And pretty soon those get to be $15 and $20 and $25 clicks. So now the economics of the one has skewed the other, right? So that's first two reasons. I got some stats here. I'll actually read them off. I don't like to read when I do these presentations, but I want to make sure I get these numbers right. This is from the USPS, so United States Postal Service. Every 5 years they do a channel, what they call, I won't get it exactly right, it's a channel research, where they research their channel being direct mail. These numbers are from 2020. They do it every 5 years. So the next one will come out about a year from now. So if you think direct mail is dead, let's take a look at some of these numbers. 80% of people say they look forward to seeing what they get in their mailbox every day. Do you think 80% of people enjoy checking their email every day? Probably not 80%. 73% of U.S. consumers prefer direct mail for communication because it allows them to read it at their own convenience. So there's that. 66% of direct mail is opened. Now, I don't know about your email stats, but nowhere close to my email. None of my emails get opened at a 66% rate. One more because it's a giant one here. Direct mail has an average shelf life of 17 days compared to 2 seconds for email. So if you send a package in the mail, on average, that thing is going to sit around, whether it's on the coffee table, on the kitchen table, on the office table. It's going to be sent to me. Maybe my wife sees it. If it's to my office, so you have this shelf life that digital just can't compete with. So I'll give one more quick example. So think about it. Everyone orders pizza, right? I don't care who you are, where you live, everyone orders pizzas. Everyone gets pizza delivered. Have you ever seen an ad on, pick your social media, pick your digital ad, and stopped, printed it out, and stuck it up on the refrigerator so you remembered to use the coupon with the pizza? Now compare that to a direct mail piece that comes in. They send you a 2-for-1 offer or 3-for-2, whatever it is. That thing's going to sit there. It's going to go up on the tack board, up on the refrigerator, and now you've got this visual representation of the thing that you want to do on a Friday night when the kids are screaming and you got to eat quickly because all hell's going to break loose. So that's what you're thinking about, is the competition, the stick around effect, and just the fact that people like it. They enjoy getting it. Even millennials, even those of us who are younger than millennials, they're creeping back into that into that analog world.
I guess as well with something that's quite tactile, something that you can hold, it does have a bit more of an emotional connection, as you say, than just pixels on a screen. So to have that in today's world, as you say, is quite a unique prospect. Everyone is rushed towards email marketing, or perhaps, as you say, pay-per-click with Meta or Facebook or with Alphabet and Google, and to actually have something that lands on your doormat can really kind of revolutionize and just lift people when they get it and go, what is this? What am I opening here? Maybe you could walk us through, Travis, one of your most successful campaigns, just again, so we can get an idea of what's working and what has worked.
Yeah, so I'll give you a very recent example. I actually just got this, was on a call with this client yesterday. I had heard about his success on Facebook and email. Name is Carlos. And what he did is first off with direct mail is you can set yourself up for success, right? Depending on what you choose to mail, how you choose to mail, who it is, when it is, the offer, right? And so Carlos was very smart with this. Like I said, this is in the trenches happening right now. This isn't, from 5 years ago. So he has a company where they coach realtors, right? People who are selling and buying homes for other people, right? So not investors, not the actual realtors who are helping the consumer out. And so he's got essentially a coaching program that he sells. It is anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000, this program that he's selling, right? And his whole idea is, hey, if I get you 1 or 2 more sales a year, you've paid for me and everything is gravy from there. So, he's selling money at a discount. And so he had a list. So this is why I said you can set yourself up for success. He had a list of low dollar figure buyers on his mailing list already, right? So they had bought everything from I think a $3 to $7 ebook to a $47 course to a $97 challenge. But none of them were coming anywhere close to approaching a $20,000 to $30,000 price point. So he decided, I want to get them to graduate up to this next thing. And so he decided to send out, hopefully you can see this, a little bank bag. And so if you're listening only, this is an actual vinyl bank bag. So if you can picture in your mind's eye, the retail store, the bank, the bank when they put their cash inside and they zip it closed and they take it to the bank at the end of each day. So this is a bank bag. We actually mail this directly in the mail. So we put the postage on the outside, we put the mailing label on the outside, and so this thing arrives in their mailbox. So as you can imagine, when this vinyl bank bag with a fictitious bank name on it shows up, what's the first thing they think of? Money. They think there's money inside, right? So of course they're going to open the thing, right? And here's the deal. Here's why we go through all this trouble. The hardest thing we have in marketing today is getting our message heard, listened to, watched, paid attention to, eyeballs, ears, whatever it is, whatever the medium is. That is the biggest obstacle we have in marketing. It's the biggest obstacle we have really in all walks of life, right? Getting attention, being seen, being heard in this flurry of activity. So we go through all this trouble to ensure that the thing gets opened. Because if none of them get opened, we cannot have a response. We can't have a response rate. We can't have a positive ROI. And so now he's converting these $3 to $100 buyers, $5 to $100 buyers, to a $20,000 to $30,000 buyer. He had about a 6% response rate with this. So he sent out 300 of these, had 7 or 8 reply, and he's again, this is in the works right now. He's extremely confident at least 2 of those 8 are going to buy, probably more. If one of them buys, his ROI is going to be about 6 to 1. If more than one of them buys, it's going to be an absolute home run for him. Mm-hmm. And so that's just one example of what we can do with this type of stuff. I would call this a conversion campaign where we're converting low buyers into high buyers. But that's just one example. And like I said, it was top of mind because I just talked to Carlos about this yesterday. He's so excited. We're finding other ways to use this stuff, to fill up a boot camp, to get webinar attendees, all that kind of stuff. So really it can work wherever in your marketing funnel where you may have people falling out. Direct mail can work as that stick point so that they don't fall out.
It's really interesting as well. Because this style of marketing is so distinctive and allows you to be creative in what you're doing as opposed to just writing an email and hoping that people are going to click on it, read it, and convert. This actually is way more creative than that. How do you measure the success of a campaign, Travis?
So ultimately, all we're really worried about is our return on investment, our ROI. If we spend $1 and we make $2 and that $1 spread is profitable for us, how many times can we spend that dollar? Right? So that's ultimately all we're worried about is that return on investment. That's why I said earlier, you can set yourself up for success. Carlos was in a spot where even though he spent $5,000 or $6,000 on a campaign, he only needed one person to be very profitable. And anything beyond that is going to be excesses of profitability, right? So what are some of the leading indicators of our ROI? So we've got response rate, which is what everyone concentrates on, right? What's your response rate? What's your response rate? What's your response rate? And that's important. But if Carlos only got one response and that person bought, his response rate would be 1/3 of 1%, which would be bad. But his ROI would be 5 or 6 to 1, which would be great, right? So a response rate is a leading indicator, right? So direct mail can obviously get the response. The other thing that you want to look at is your conversion rate. So what of those people who respond, how many of those convert to whatever the call to action was? In Carlos's case, it's to buy the coaching program. So what's our conversion rate? So we've got response rate, we've got conversion rate, we've got return on investment. Other ways we use to track this stuff, dedicated phone lines. So if you're going to have them call in, having a phone line so you can measure the intake. QR codes, dedicated landing pages, so we can monitor the response rate to those platforms. And with technology now, and quite frankly, direct mail getting into the 21st century with some of that stuff now has made all that stuff a whole lot easier. So to get a phone line dedicated for a campaign, to have a landing page dedicated for a campaign, QR codes. So now you can track all these things. And what I tell people often is, we can often drive response, but I can't fix most of the time your internal workings of how you handle that response. So sometimes now that can indicate, okay, the sales team isn't converting like they should, or the answering service isn't converting like they should. So that's to say the response that we generate is all about the front end. Most of you are going to have some kind of interaction in there to get from, if they got to go from step 1 to step 10 and direct mail is getting them to step 2 or 3, you've still got to give them the breadcrumbs. But we're looking at response rate, conversion rate, and then ultimately ROI. And if you put yourself in a position where that ROI can be had with 1/3 of 1%, now you're in a great place, because we can almost always get 1/3 of 1% response rate. Carlos didn't do the direct mail in a vacuum, right? It wasn't just direct mail and hope and pray. He took those 300 buyers. He's got up to 10,000 we are hopefully going to be sending here very shortly, but he took those 300, he sent them a direct mail piece. They stopped getting all the other communication that they could have gotten from him, got the direct mail, and then got emails about the direct mail, about the offer, had outbound phone calls about the offer. But again, so they're putting them in this silo where, all they're seeing is whatever offer is in here. So we kind of segregate them out. And I think that's important for people, because especially if you have a list of people you're already working with and you've got all the other outside noise of all your other offers. So you got 17 offers going off at once and this one gets lost in the shuffle. So, segregate, put them in this silo so that they only experience this thing right now, and they're not getting the webinar invite, and they're not getting the affiliate invite, and they're getting this offer right now across all the media that we have to touch them with.
It's a really good distinction to make as well, because otherwise, as you say, it is confusing if you receive something alongside everything else. You want to make sure that it's a really focused campaign. In terms of business to consumer and business to business, is there a way to get people's mailing addresses so that anybody who's starting from zero could do this immediately?
So yeah, there absolutely is. I'll speak from the perspective of the United States, because that's where I am. And data in the United States is extremely easy to get, right? So privacy is dead. So if you can imagine all the websites, I shouldn't say all the most of the websites you visit, most of the products you purchase, most of the things you register for. So if you buy a new doohickey for the house and you register the warranty, that's now being sold. And so we can get very, very, very tight specific mailing lists on the vast majority of things. Now, there is like this wall for the most part between business and consumer. There is a little bit of flow back and forth where we can get consumer details on a business owner, but by and large, you've got these walls between the two, right? So for consumers, we could get new home buyers, new movers, new mortgage borrowers, new parents, new marriages, new divorces, right? And that's just like the tip of the iceberg. We can get them by age and income and whether they own their home and whether they have kids and honestly, there's like 3,000 data points, right? And we probably only use the top 10 or 20 of those 3,000 we could possibly use. But think about this. If you're a dentist and you want to get new patients, what better way than to get a list of people who are new movers into your area? They need a new dentist. If they move more than 5 or 6 miles, most people need a new dentist. And let's say we get married couples with children and we target the mother in the house. If we get the mother in the house to show up into the dental office, we're probably getting the kids and the husband as well. And so now you can kind of see how that can be a multiplier effect, right? That's just one way to do it with consumers. On the B2B side, we can track them by what we call SIC code or NAICS code, NAICS. That's the code that the federal government gives you of the type of business you are. So attorney, doctor, veterinarian, right? So in doctor, they've got 22 different listings, let's say, and then under attorney, they'll have 36. But we can target by the specific business type. We can target by their size, whether it be employee size, whether it be sales volume size. Let's say you do, let's say you're an auto mechanic and you do fleets of cars. We can even go and see all the HVAC companies that have 5 or more service vehicles in their fleet. Well, that would be a perfect list now to get for someone who does fleet work for autos and cars. So that's just like the tip of the iceberg. You can go even further than that. We had a client who was a financial planner. He wanted to start targeting people who were approaching retirement age who had a federal, I'm not going to get the words exactly right. They had a federal investment account, essentially, right? So with the federal government, they have their own version of a 401k or an IRA. And as they were approaching retirement, we were able to get that list and market to them because as they retired, those funds are now fungible. They can move them into his services. So, I mean, that's how deep you can get when it comes to mailing lists in the United States. I know Canada's a little tougher, but in the States, privacy is dead. You can find, if you needed left-handed golfers who only golf on a Tuesday afternoon, it's probably an available list.
I was going to say, I think a lot of people, when they think about direct marketing, they think that they need a list that they have created themselves. So to hear what you're saying here, Travis, that actually there are brokers that you can go to get this type of information and get those addresses. And I guess, of course, there's a cost associated with doing that. But as you say, as long as you're keeping an eye on your return on investment, that's just a cost of doing business, right?
Correct. I mean, let's say you do trade shows. Well, you got to write that check for the trade show before you ever step a foot on the trade room floor, right? So this is the same idea. So if you think about direct mail, you really have kind of 3 costs to consider. You've got if you're starting from scratch, you don't have a lot of assets. You've got a mailing list, purchase or rental. You've got the creative pieces that need to be created. Now, that obviously can be done in-house. You don't have to pay someone to do that. And then you obviously have the getting of the message out, printing and stuffing and mailing, all that stuff. So those are the 3 things you've got to worry about when it comes to direct mail. We always start with the mailing list. It is at least 50% of the battle, and what we send, how we send, when we send, and the offers we make will all dictate who the person is receiving it. Again, if we're targeting mothers with children as a dentist, that is a different message than targeting even for the same dentist, recent retirees, and we want to do, reconstructive surgery because their teeth are falling out, right? For example. So it all comes back to that list because everything we do after that is dictated by the who we're going to mail to.
Makes sense. Makes absolute sense. In terms of cost, you mentioned as well, obviously there's the cost of getting the list, if that's the route or the route you're going to take. In terms of stamps on envelopes and so on, I guess a lot of people are put off by the fact that, unlike sending an email, which a lot of people perhaps mistakenly believe is free.
Yep.
When it comes down to it, I guess, there is a cost to sending email. There is a cost to sending a physical piece of mail, especially if it's 3D mail or lumpy mail, however you define it. What do you say to those people that are maybe sitting on the fence or that's stopping them from actually making that commitment to using actual direct mail to reach their audience?
Yeah, so the very first thing I tell people is, just like our example with Carlos, you should be able to squeeze something out of an existing mailing list that you already have, whether it's peanut butter buyers who haven't bought jelly. That's essentially what Carlos did, right? So you should be able to squeeze something out of an existing mailing list as long as you offer something more than one product to one person at one time. Are there businesses like that out there? Sure, but that's 1 or 2% of the businesses that we work with. So one of the campaigns I love to do if you're just starting out is a client reactivation campaign. So I'll briefly go over this. So you've got a list of your customers. Let's use a jewelry store, for example. We'll go back to our retail roots. You have a jewelry store, and you've got a list of, let's say, husbands, men who have bought stuff from you before, right? And let's say we know that they're married. Well, now my brain says, okay, so they've got Christmas, they've got birthday, and they've got an anniversary, all of which are a great time for a husband to buy something for their wife. Now let's say it's been 3 years since you've seen a segment of this list. You now send them a direct mail offer to then come back into the store, you deadbeat husband, because it's been 3 years since you bought something for your wife at this store, and now you've got to do something about it, right? And so that's just an example of reactivating an old client list, right? It could be a veterinarian. Well, let's use a dentist because everyone goes to the dentist. You're supposed to go to the dentist every 6 months. If you hit month 7, you're lost. You're inactive. We've got to reactivate you. So every dentist who has a list of patients who have hit month 7 without being in the chair should be sending a reactivation campaign to get them into the chair. That's where those are the types of campaigns where with an existing company, even if you're not all that big, it could be dozens of them. It doesn't need to be hundreds or thousands, where you can squeeze some more juice out of there, get them back in the fold, and quite frankly, put yourself in a Carlos position where you only need a 0.5%, a 1%, a 2% response rate. You don't need a 9% response rate to be profitable.
I mean, it's fascinating stuff. And obviously you've got so much experience in this sector. For anybody who's maybe looking at this and thinking, yeah, actually, I feel quite inspired by this conversation, but I don't know what I should send. Could you maybe just give us another couple of examples of things that you have sent in the mail that have actually kind of piqued the interest of the recipient?
Yeah, so let's go back to our new mover example. I don't care what you're mailing. I don't care what kind of product you're offering. There are, home services, painting, furniture, right? All the things that we know about new movers, they're going to spend, I forget the exact number. The average new mover spends like twice as much on home improvements than the average non-new mover, right? So they're getting windows and roofing, right? Well, what if you just we have these little fake express envelopes. So if you're not watching on video, they're made to look like a FedEx or a USPS priority mail envelope, but they're not. They're just they have these, it says rapid delivery, urgent letter, deliver immediately, right? And they got fun colors with them, if you're not seeing the video here. And imagine if this thing shows up in your mailbox. This is a very low cost way with that new mover to send something that's different, that's unique, that can cut the clutter, that can make sure, again, I wish we could just send number 10 envelopes with a stamp and a computer printed address on it, because that's the cheapest way to do direct mail and send out stuff and people would look at it. But we can't. So that's like one example. Can you use a fun, different, unique envelope? That's the cheapest and quickest way. We've got these other ones. They say airmail on them. And so they've got kind of this red, white, and blue pattern on the outside. And they say airmail, rush to addressee. You guys can go check out my website and see actual pictures of these things if you're only listening. But those are the types of things that can be very different, very unique, that don't break the bank, that aren't sending, it's not sending a bank bag. It's not sending a little foot in the mail, but it's different, it's unique, and it's going to be something that your recipient has very likely not seen, thus the curiosity factor, thus we open it, now we've got a shot.
You mentioned your website just a second ago as well that people should go to check out. What is that, Travis?
You bet. I'll give it to you, then I'll spell it. It's 3dmailresults.com. So that's the number 3, the letter D, 3D, mailresults.com. You can see pictures of all this stuff. I've got a free book there that you can request, completely free. It's not one of those, yeah, it's free, but give us a credit card. Yeah, it's free, but then we're going to bill you $99 a month for eternity. Nothing like that. should be the first thing you see. You'll see a little picture. It says how to explode your advertising results. There'll be a little splash page there when you go. Get that book. It's completely free, and you can start seeing this stuff. Okay, what does the bank bag look like? How do I use it? What is the express mail envelope? We call them our faux express mail envelopes. What do they look like? So 3dmailresults.com. Everything you could possibly want with direct mail, 3D mail is there.
Excellent. I know we're running out of time, but very quickly, what's next for you, Travis, and for 3D Mail Results?
Great question. We have started a new program that, when I say new, we're about 14 months into it. So that's relatively new speaking in the direct mail world, right? Direct mail hasn't changed a whole lot in over 100 years, right? So we've got this new program. We're calling it Direct Mail 2.0. And this is a program where you can send mail to a list and then also on a one-to-one basis serve them ads online. So essentially we're creating custom audiences, we're taking a list, we're mailing it, we're uploading it to Google, Facebook, and Instagram, and now getting a one-to-one match so we can serve them ads as well. So now instead of having a silo of information here with direct mail, a silo of information here with your digital, we're bringing those things together so that now those people, the day we send mail is the day they start seeing our digital ads. So now we're warming them up for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days before that mail arrives. Now the mail arrives with the same messaging, the same images, the same offer that they're seeing online. We have back-end tracking with all that as well. I mentioned that we can do QR codes and phone tracking. All of that is built into this new platform so that you can now see, what are my digital ads doing? When was my mail delivered? How many phone calls am I getting? Am I getting QR code scanned? In fact, we have a new technology called personal QR codes, where every person on that mailing list gets a unique QR code, and we know exactly when Tom or Harry or Billy or Sam scans that code, and then we can follow up with them as well.
Wow, that sounds really exciting as well. Well, we wish you all the best with that, Travis. That's amazing. Once again, for those people that are eager to learn more about you or to learn about your work and maybe get in contact, perhaps even use your services, where do we need to go?
The best place to start the journey is at the website 3dmailresults.com, the number 3, the letter D, mailresults. Get the free book. It'll be a great primer if you're new to this stuff. If you're a veteran direct mail person, I still think you should get the book. But if you're a veteran in this space, start clicking around the website. And then, of course, there's contact us forms in there as well. My team would be happy to help you if you've got some more personalized questions for us.
Travis, that's excellent. Thank you once again for joining us and for sharing your insights. Really appreciate it.
No problem.